You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
I looked at the picture.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 246 of East San Antonio's favorite podcast. I'm Jeremiah Morrill. Today we are rejoined by executive video producer emeritus Chris Staten. You guys may remember him as Chris Guffey.
Hello.
Welcome back, man. On my left, we have you're a rotating member of the cast. You're on the website, Jesse. Welcome back.
Hello.
You're sitting in for Dakota, who's trying to win Father of the Year.
Well, yeah.
As is Zach. They're competing. We're going to have some sort of an award to determine who was who had the better spring break when they return. Sure. All right.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I was just like, how do you determine that?
I don't know. You can spend the whole episode figuring it out, though. Today's episode, we're going to be talking, we're going to extend our candidate series, and we're going to be talking to Michael Mahoney and Tony Saunders, both candidates on the Republican side of the ballot for county prosecutor. Prosecutor Joe, a Boss Hog alum, is retiring. I don't know if he's moving to the golf course in South Carolina or the racetrack at Indianapolis, what he's going to do, but he's moving on. We're going to have a new prosecutor. So we're going to hang out with these guys today, learn about the office, learn about them, and let everybody be informed as they go to the ballot box in May. Do want to thank our sponsor, Big Bounce Inflatables, for the episode. Awesome to have them on board. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. We're here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we'll provoke you. Other times we'll make you laugh, but hopefully you'll always learn something new. We just did about 15 minutes of Patreon to let Jesse not laugh at any jokes or show any personality. It was great. Mm-hmm. We talked about concerts.
We did.
And how far you would drive. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe it'd be cool to talk in hours because that's what most people think of when they talk about driving. But you said, no, let's convert everything to an integer.
Miles.
And we had to talk in miles, but not just how far you went, but the full round trip. That's how you show commitment to Jesse.
Well, I mean, you could drive to Indy and it could be a 5-hour trip. If you went to Chicago, it's also a 5-hour trip depending on traffic.
So it was fun. I think it was an enjoyable Patreon worth a little something to people. Learn a little bit about the candidates and
we'll know once
what they've done.
The Patreon money comes in.
Yeah, cha-ching.
They might have reduced their dollars
immediately. After.
They're like, this is terrible content. I want more people from Patreon to remove their money so that we know that we're getting metrics.
You are very much a troubled salesperson.
Hey, you just need valid data, to make. Yeah, we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Or you could say the valid data is, did new people sign up? Did you retain them? How long? There's a lot of ways you can measure things.
We don't need to go down this rabbit hole.
Not entirely upon cancellations. All right, we do have to thank the folks that give at $50 or more a month. That's the absolutely incredible Christy Avery. I can see she's already in the chat room. John Phillips, our very good friend over at the Andy Moore Buick GMC in Fishers. And Anthony Meyer, he's out there running the roads, delivering freight and food and whatever else across the country, listening to what he calls his favorite podcast. I don't know what we've done to earn that, but he says we're his favorite.
Last I heard, he was shipping rockets to Russia.
Well, could be. I know he's been doing a lot of very northern routes. I think he's been up on Lake Superior and all points in between. And there are some people that see Russia from up there. So you never know.
Some people do. Yeah, I can see it from Alaska. I've heard that.
I see John Phillips is in the chat room as well. All right, let's get into the candidate series here. We're talking with Tony and Michael. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves a little bit, and we'll start to familiarize ourselves, and we're going to jump into the conversation. Tony, let's start with you. Tell us about yourself, your background, and what makes you tick.
Well, I've been a practicing attorney here for 16 and a half years. I've been part of the legal system here when I clerked for another attorney in town starting in early 2004. I have lived in Henry County since 1986 when we moved to the family farm after my grandfather died, and I've been here ever since. And I actually have my family has a long history in this county. And when I was in law school, I thought I could serve the people of my county by practicing law here. I had graduated from Shenandoah High School in 1995, and I went to Purdue, got my engineering degree, realized I did not like that. Not into the computer thing because it was very back then, I kind of got in that in-between era where you didn't have a lot of computer knowledge available to you in the smaller schools. So I wasn't good with computers, and I went to law school, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I've been able to interact with a lot of people and help a lot of people. And I really enjoy that part of my job, is being able to take somebody who has a problem and help them solve that problem. I'm your neighbor.
That's right.
I'm right next door to you.
Tony and the Boss Hog crowd share a parking lot once a week.
I'll say many times I show up and I look in there and there's someone in there, and that must be you.
I do work late, much to the chagrin of my wife and children. Yeah. But, you got to do what you got to do to make money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so, I've been over in this particular office since 2009 on my own. And in that time, I've enjoyed what I've done. And I want to be able to serve the people of Henry County better as their prosecutor. And that's why I'm running.
Awesome. And Michael, let's get to know you a little bit. You reminded me that we met. You were going door to door for Prosecutor Joe 4 years ago, and I met you just outside my house.
Yes, I was walking. I just know we were on the south side of town.
We were on South Main Street, I think, just outside of Southview or something.
We met, and as I mentioned, I told you today, I know Sean Rouse, a friend of the program, and he always speaks so highly of the program, and so that's how I've always
he vouched for us.
Yes, Sean vouched for you.
Well, that's very good. So tell us about yourself. Your what you've done practicing, your background.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on tonight. I'm a deputy prosecutor. I started here in the Henry County Prosecutor's Office in 2002. So I've been a deputy prosecutor for over 20 years. I started out of law school. I came here and I was fortunate enough to have this position. I wanted to get involved and work in a prosecutor's office, and this position was open. And so I was fortunate enough to get it. I went to law school at IU Indianapolis, and I graduated in May of 2001. My New York experience, I started as a part-time deputy prosecuting attorney, and I worked as well as an associate at the Milliken Law Office. And now Mr. Milliken, he's joined up with Defer Varan. And Mr. Milliken had a law office, and he was nice enough to let me be an associate and do some civil work in his office for about 4 years. And then there was an opportunity to work a full-time position. And so I've been in my current position since October of 2005 in the prosecutor's office.
Awesome. So what motivates you to jump into the race? What
motivates me? As you indicated, I campaigned for Joe. It's been a great privilege to work for Joe. Joe wasn't going to run. I've always thought I'd like to serve. I enjoy serving my community as a deputy prosecuting attorney. I've always had it in the back of my mind that I'd like to run for office someday and experience that. I didn't know when that opportunity or how even that opportunity would present itself. And then when Joe decided he wasn't going to run for re-election, I spent a lot of time discussing it with my wife. We did consider it, and something that I just decided I wanted to do at this point. The opportunity was there. I wanted to take a leadership role in the office as well as in the community, and trying to help keep our community safe. And this has just been a great opportunity to do that at this time.
How do you like campaigning, the campaigning process and jumping into the politics?
It's great, and I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people, and I enjoy getting to know people. And I also, that was when I was discussing it with my wife, she would say, when I'd go out and I've done things for a few candidates, and I would always come home and just say how much I enjoyed it, how much I enjoyed getting out there. And so when we were deciding whether to run at this time, that was something we always came back to, is that this is a good opportunity to do it at this time. And so I'm really enjoying it and looking forward to it and doing it right now.
Tony, tell us about why this is the time you think it's right to run for prosecutor, and how the campaign's going for your side.
Yeah. So I've spent, like I said, about 16 and a half years practicing. And the funny thing that I've observed is not only how much you learn as time goes on, but how much you learn about yourself and taking stock in what it is that you need to watch, what I need to watch out for when I'm doing something. Am I doing this the right way? And one of the things that I find when I campaign is people come to me and they'll tell me about problems they have or questions that they have about why a certain thing works this way or another. And I learn about what the people say their chief concern is. And sometimes it's not what the people in the system's chief concern is. And I enjoy learning what those criticisms are and seeing how I can use my skills to help them. And the reason that now is the time is because I do have such a great deal of experience, and it's a wide range of experience. It's not just in the criminal context. For example, when you start out, you think you're going to change the world, okay? And you get what they call target fixation, where you're just worried about what's in front of you. Well, one of the things I've learned over the last 16 years is that what you see in a family case, what you see in a delinquency case, what you see in a chins case, all of these things lead to future problems if you don't adequately address them now, in the here and now. So what I look for are global solutions to problems. When I represent a client, I don't do anything that would create a problem for them down the road. For example, if there's a plea agreement, or if there's a resolution to a family case where there's a commitment that I know my client can't make, I steer them away from it. And it's because of that global view of how all of the parts of the legal system and all of the component cases interact that I think I'm in a better position than anybody right now to serve. And it's very important that while you can just deal with the criminal case that's in front of you, you realize that there are consequences down the line for not dealing with it in a more global sense, being soft, letting this person slide because you feel sorry for them. You can't do that. You've got to make sure that there's an adequate respect for the law. And the only way you get an adequate respect for the law is to vehemently enforce those laws. And we're about to have a new jail, which means we're about to have more room to house people, and we can be stronger on crime. We can put more people in jail who need to go there. But the other thing that I want to focus on is there's problem-solving courts now that are designed not necessarily to put people in an incarceration situation, but to address their problems so that we don't see them all the time. At the candidate forum, the Republican Club had, Jay Davis mentioned the statistic that 90% of their inmates have mental health problems. And I had already started looking into the problem-solving court, mental health court, where instead of putting people into a system, a jail or something along those lines, we put people into mental health treatment that hopefully gets them on the right track. Now, obviously, you can't keep them there forever. It's like drug court or any problem-solving court. You can't keep somebody in there forever, but hopefully you give them the tools that they need so that they're not constantly in and out of the system, because that's one of the problems that we have in this county is the people that I saw when I started practicing law in 2005. We're just seeing them.
Massive recidivism.
Absolutely. Yeah. But they start out as users or people with mental health problems, and they start dealing to feed their habit because we've not solved their problem. Yeah. Or even given them the opportunity to solve their problem, which is the thing. You can't make somebody change their ways.
So for the time, and I want to bring Jesse in on this conversation, for my adult consciousness, you've seen people running for prosecutors saying, I'm going to be tough on crime. I'm going to be tough on crime.
Well, I was going to say, I want to step back, actually. I want to, can we define what a prosecutor is? Because I don't know if, I'm trying to like step back into if someone's just listening to this for the first time. Hopefully they are, because they're interested. But like, what is the role of the prosecutor? Like, we don't talk about that in our notes, but it's super important to discuss. So, well, let's jump over to Michael or whatever.
Jesse, your prosecutor is your chief law enforcement officer of the community.
Yeah,
the prosecutor is going to be the one who's going to be able to set the tone for the community and be able to set policies and be right there and make sure our community stays safe. So that's one function of the prosecutor, is the chief law enforcement officer. You also have the prosecutor. You also have to have the ability to run the office, manage the office. And I know that's something we might get to later, but you're going to be your manager of the office. You're going to have to deal with budgets. You're also going to have to deal with the situation of a small county like ours. Prosecutors going to also have to take court cases. Some bigger counties, the prosecutor would have the luxury of just being a management person. But here in a smaller county, a prosecutor is going to have to spend time in court just due to the demands at times of there's only so many staff members to be able to cover all the courts. So at some points, the prosecutor is going to have to be in court. And so that's the function of the prosecutor.
Tony, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. So the way I envision the office is that, so the prosecutor, actually one of the challenges that either one of us will have, depending on the outcome of the election, is that the chief deputy is going to retire and the investigator is going to retire. And we're probably going to lose both of those people, and those are big holes to fill. And what the prosecutor has to be able to do is rely on the investigator. My intent is to set it up in that office similar to what you would see in the larger counties, where you would have a group of attorneys who would handle plea agreements, pretrial motions, things like that. And then you would have myself and the chief deputy, and we would try cases and we would pursue convictions. And I think one of the things that has kind of hurt overall, and it's not Joe's fault, it's COVID's fault.
Right.
We didn't have trials for like a year and a half because the state Supreme Court kept suspending trials. And one of the problems that creates, and probably the biggest problem that creates, is the jail fills up because Criminal Rule 4 gets suspended. All of these fast and speedy trial rules got suspended. So you couldn't try people and get them out. So they're sitting over there filling the jail up. We don't have room. And now you've got to get those people out. But one of the problems that I think we need to deal with is I have been told by 4 separate detectives that sometimes cases are referred to the prosecutor's office and no action's taken on them. And I have personally committed to those officers who've told me this problem that I will either charge it or give them an explanation for why it can't be charged. So I guess that's one of the questions I was going to get into is I guess there's some prosecutorial discretion, and you're saying that it's kind of, you can take action, you can choose to not take action at all, or you can say, I'm not going to take action. It's almost like a governor signing a bill, right? There's 3 different routes you could go.
Well, it's like he said,
Yeah.
Michael said he was like the executive law enforcement or whatever. What was
Chief
it?
law enforcement.
Thank you. Chief law enforcement. So
What you're saying is that law enforcement officers will arrest somebody and preliminarily charge, but then they'll never get formal charges from the prosecutor's office.
So basically what happens is a law enforcement officer, detective, or whoever will, and these are the people who they're not road officers, they're not picking people up off the street. They are investigating serious crimes. And they will do their investigation, and almost all of those investigations say, I am forwarding this report to the prosecutor's office for the appropriate charges to be filed. And we need to make sure that those cases are properly screened. And if the detective sends it to me and he believes that there are adequate evidentiary bases for filing the case, for pursuing the case, if I agree, we'll file it. If I don't, I'll call him up and I'll say, hey, we got a problem here. Can you get me whatever else I need? Can you get me X, Y, and Z? And he'll either tell me no, or let me try, or whatever. And then once I know 100% of what I got, then I'll be able to make a better decision. But I do know that one of the most important things that the prosecutor does is screening cases, because, and I don't know how familiar a lot of people are, so I'm going to kind of explain it a little bit, but in the federal system and some of the original states, you have to present felonies to a grand jury and get an indictment. In the state of Indiana, you don't have to do that. In the state of Indiana, the prosecutor can solely decide whether to charge or not. And the bad part about that is sometimes the prosecutor makes a decision based on bad information. I know for a fact I've had a couple of criminal cases out of county, not in this county, where the officer submitted a report and he left out exculpatory information that would have led to the prosecutor not charging. And in that particular case, it came out in deposition that they didn't have a case. And that's the type of thing that has to be avoided. And like I said, that wasn't here. That's not a criticism of Joe. That was in a different county. I won't say which one. But all of these cases, the charging decision is the most important decision. And then when it comes to actually pursuing a case, and one of the things that I have experience with quite a bit is going to court and dealing with the rules of evidence, because even if I'm not in a criminal trial, I do go on family cases that require us to follow the rules of evidence and other such cases. And I know that all of my cases are won pretty much before I step into the courtroom, through preparation, through knowing what evidence I can get in, what evidence I can't. And it's being able to prepare for that. And one of the most important attributes that I bring to the courtroom for my clients is that when there's no phrase, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's how you react that tells how good you are.
Mike Tyson says that, I think.
Yes. Well,
I do promise.
Mike Tyson.
Someone says that. It's one of the boxers.
Now, I do promise not to bite anybody's ear off in court if I am elected. But seriously, you do have a plan until you get punched in the face, and that's how you respond to that, and it's the ability to think on your feet. And I do rapidly adjust to whatever happens, and I've been very successful for my clients. And I'd like to. That's where I am.
Yeah. Let's spend some time with Michael and exploring the idea of, I guess, prosecutorial discretion. I get when things are filed, how you determine what your thought process is when it comes to that.
Yes, in prosecutorial discretion, you got what you have to do is you review law enforcement reports, you review what the investigation's uncovered, you take a look at everything. Times you're going to be able to send the law enforcement officer back out there, see what more evidence can we get. And then you're going to review the charges. You're going to see what the actions are, if there's elements to meet crimes that have been committed. And then you have the ability to prosecute and charge. Prosecutorial discretion, it's something that it's what the prosecutor has. And you want someone who has a high amount of integrity, someone who has a high ethical standard, because the prosecutor, as Tony said, the prosecutor could be the one to charge you with the crime. And so you want someone with a high integrity and high ethical standards who's going to be able to make good common sense decisions. We're attorneys, but you also have to be able to apply your common sense as well. And being able to determine what type of charges to file, what type of charges are appropriate. You need to have good communication with your law enforcement officers. One thing I always make sure is I make sure every law enforcement officer I know, they have my cell phone number. You have a question, you call me any time of the day, anytime you text, you call. I'll be glad to talk to you about anything, because that's what I do. I want to support our law enforcement officers. I want to make the best decisions for our community.
So let's talk, I guess, at a 5,000 or 10,000 foot level about the office and how it works. So the administrative side, helping folks understand. I think people have a general idea of how a sheriff's office works, and that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer, but they also have, they run a detention facility. They've got road officers. Tell us about what the prosecutor's office looks like. We elect you to this job, and I assume you've got a staff, you've got some investigators, you've got trial responsibilities. What's it? Paint the picture for the voter.
Well,
what are we hiring you for?
What you're hiring for is you're hiring me for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that I'm going to be ready.
No wonder you guys quit after 4 or 8 years.
But I'm going to be ready, and I'm going to be ready, and my phone's going to be on, and I'm going to be ready to answer calls. Crime doesn't know time. Crime doesn't go 9 to 5. So bad crime, any crime doesn't happen that time. I have to be ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that's the responsibility of the job. It's a great responsibility, and it's a great privilege. It's something I really considered when I decided to run. Is that something I'm ready to take on? And I am. But that's what it is, because I'm familiar with it with my 20 plus years of experience. I know what needs to be done because I've seen it done, and I've had opportunities to do it. And it's just something that you, again, someone with a high integrity and great ethical standards. But let's talk about running the office, though. What does the office consist of? The office consists of, let's start just with the staff, the prosecutor staff. And you're going to have a chief deputy prosecutor. We have an excellent chief deputy prosecutor right now, Rick Culver, and he's excellent. He was a longtime judge in Hancock County. I think it's fair to say that he's not going to last the next term, the term of the next prosecutor. He's going to retire at some point. I hope he stays a while, but I don't know if he will or not. Then there are 2 state paid deputies. These state paid deputies are what they do, and the reason they're referenced, I want to refer to them as the state paid deputies. Basically, state paid deputies, they're paid by the state.
Yep.
Then there's 2 county deputy prosecutors, paid deputy prosecutors. One of them works part-time and one of them is full-time. I'm the full-time county deputy prosecutor. Then there's a county deputy, paid deputy prosecutor who works in the child support division. Then we have an investigator. There's 1 investigator. We have an office manager for the prosecutor's office, the criminal division side. There's 3 legal assistants who help prepare the cases, do the paperwork on the.
Are all these folks in the Justice
side.
Center? I guess.
Yes,
on Race Street?
yes, all in the Justice Center. And I'm going to say a criminal division and a child support division. The child support division, there's a door, and there's a physical door separating it. Only certain people are supposed to go through that door because of some federal incentives that are received by the child support office. And so only people who have done the appropriate training and have the proper clearance are supposed to go in the child support office. So that's why when I say there's 2 divisions and 2 offices, we're actually one big office.
It's all a matter of funding, I guess,
yes,
right? And
yes.
Which
yes.
Government is really good at figuring out what the county paid for, what the state paid for,
yes.
and what the feds paid for, and complying with rules to get your head count to where it can be, right?
Yes, and then there's a child support office manager, 2 case managers in the child support offices who help do their duties, which are establish paternity, establish child support, collect current child support, and collect arrearage. And I say the 2 part-time child support case managers as well. And
so if you're elected, you would expect no major changes with the staff as far as the head count, the organization, that kind of thing.
Our staffs, in the 20 years I've worked there, the staff members changed. We've lost one of the legal assistants just because of county cutbacks,
sure,
which is normal. Will there be staffing changes? There will be because.
And I'm not talking about individual names. I'm just the structure of the organizational structure.
The organizational structure. We'll look into, if I'm hired, we'll look into hiring another full-time case manager in the child support division. There'll be ways that we could do that without costing the county funding, and we're going to look into that. Also, but the personnel, there'll be changes just to the extent that there will be retirements that are coming within and I'll just say the next 4-year term. That's fair to say. The structure, there could be some structural changes on how cases will be divided and assigned and what kind of caseload everyone has, but there won't be. But the office, I would continue to run the office fairly similar to how it's been run.
All right. Anything on that topic from you, Tony?
Well, I don't plan on any personnel changes. I've worked with pretty much everybody in that office on individual cases, and I don't have a problem with any of them. Even Michael, who's running, I'm not planning on any of those changes. Like I said, you've got 2 pretty big changes that are coming just through natural retirements, and I think you have to get a handle on those. The one thing I would like is maybe to have an additional investigator on staff to be an additional liaison between the prosecutor's office and law enforcement.
So is that the kind of question we need to be talking to the county council folks about when they come on? If the prosecutor's office can find a way to get additional funding for more investigation?
Do you agree with this as well, Michael?
It may just be a shell game.
Interesting with the prosecutor's funding. Prosecutor funding is going to be a lot. It's going to be not a lot different, but some different in that prosecutor's office is a little bit self-funded, where we generate funds through people who don't have criminal histories and they're charged with misdemeanors or some low-level felonies. We enter into what's called agreements to withhold prosecution, where we stop prosecuting them for a time period. They comply with some terms and conditions, and then they pay court costs. And then those funds are then contributed, and they help run the prosecutor's office. And so that's part of the funding. That's a little bit different than
is that most of the funding, or is that most of the funding, or is that just?
It's not most of the funding.
Yeah,
no,
it's just part of the funding.
But it's just part of the funding.
Gotcha.
But it's that different than other county offices.
Right.
Other county offices don't have ways to.
Well, that helps manage some of your bias, right? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if it's
all your funding, you're like, look, we'll just. We're not going to charge you.
You have an incentive to continue your existence, right?
Yeah. So
I could see.
No, I didn't know
Jesse's-
that. I'm just saying because I didn't know that. So that's interesting information. So
Tony, how does the average citizen interact with the prosecutor's office? How would in our day to day? How would we notice the prosecutors doing their job?
Well, it's like anything. You don't notice something until something bad happens, and you either commit a crime, or you or someone you love or care about is the victim of a crime. And at that point, and I guess it goes back to the question of, you asked why would we hire you? And the reason you want a strong and aggressive prosecutor is because you are not allowed to go get justice on your own. You're relying on the prosecutor to do so. So if you are unfortunately the victim of a crime, you want someone who's bold, aggressive, and has a reputation for getting things done. And
somebody stole my truck, and I'm really not supposed to go recover it myself and handle that.
And last I checked, we don't have any Bruce Waynes in Henry County. So
we would prefer you didn't. No. Because then you could go from being the victim to being the criminal, which is not a good trait. But anyway,
not ideal.
No, no. But anyway, that's what you're really looking for here is somebody who can get into court, can say, if you want to take a plea agreement, these are the terms. If not, we'll go to trial. And then knowing when you go to trial, you're going to lose, and whatever I offered you is going to get worse after you lose. And that's one of the things in Henry County that I think we really need to get back to is getting people in front of juries, teaching that respect for the law, and trials. Trials are such a major undertaking, the time it takes up from the courts and everything else. But I think it's important to have them. But sometimes in another county that I won't mention the name of, they overdo it. I was in a court over there for a family law matter, and the judge looked at me and said, I'll be honest with you, I have criminal trials set every week for the next 4 months. That's a little bit overkill. You got to find a good balance. And one of the things that I hear a lot is the so-called jailhouse lawyer says, well, the longer I sit here, the better deal I'll get. And that's not an attitude that we need to foster or encourage. We need to be getting these people out of jail. We need to get these cases cleared off the docket one way or another. And we don't need to have people sitting around waiting for a better deal. They need to know they got it. It's not getting any better. And it'll only get worse if you force us to go to trial.
And same with you, Michael, as far as how the average citizen would interact with the office, or how they do interact with the office. Any comments on that side?
It's a good point where you're dealing with people usually at one of the lowest moments of their life when they have to come into contact with the prosecutor's office. You're dealing with someone who's either been charged with a crime or they're a victim of a crime. How do people, that's how people come into contact. That's why someone would have the need to deal with the prosecutor's office. Always cherish, always take into account as a victim. When you're the prosecutor, you don't represent the victim. You don't represent what they want, but you do respect them and you do treat them with respect. And you always remember, I always post on my office, the statutory victim rights that people have, as well as the Indiana constitutional victim rights that they have, which are very similar. They've been essentially the constitutional right was codified. But how do you came into contact? That's one of the things I do enjoy about living in the community is I'm around the community. I live my life and you're around the community. You get to see people when you're going out and you're visiting with them, and you get to see people out in the community. They're able to talk to you and they're able to see you and be like, oh, I've had situations, people have come to my home to install a refrigerator, and they were like, I remember you prosecuted me for drug dealing. I went to prison for this many years, but thank you for doing that, because I needed that. I needed treatment. And walking down the road, people coming up. I've had a situation. Someone came up to me and was like, thank you for prosecuting my brother and holding him accountable. He needed that. Just being out and about in town, someone saying, thank you. You prosecuted the person who battered my mother. Thank you for holding that person accountable. So, but I cherish or always enjoy hearing comments or talking to the public. That's why I got into this line of work, is being able to try to help people, those charged with crime, or those people who've been victimized, unfortunately, and having to help them. Also, you can also help people who have had struggles in their lives and have been charged with crimes, and they've been able to turn their life around by being held accountable.
So something that I wanted to ask each of you about is we've referred to it as a jail, and I know it's more than a jail. Like, the official term that I read in the paper is that it's the Detention and Rehabilitation Center that's getting ready to open, and what effect that's going to have on our community. So you've got a facility that now is going to have more space for head count, but also some treatment options. And how does that interact with the prosecutor's office? Is that, I assume it's going to be a net benefit, having the new facility? Yes.
I mean, it's going to be a net benefit. It's going to be a place where the offenders are going to have better conditions than they do now. It's also going to be a place where we're going to have additional beds, and those additional beds will be able to be put to use if necessary. It's going to be a net benefit. The treatment options are going to increase, safety options as well. But it's going to allow the community to be safer, because there's going to be more beds. So that is going to be a net benefit, as well as the additional services that will be able to be provided.
Tony, any comments on the new facility from your side?
Yeah, one of the things when I started was judges had the practical ability. They always have legal ability, but one of the tools to enforce parents who don't pay support and make them pay their support was incarceration. Okay. Well, as the jail filled up with a bunch of people that the state said they didn't want to house anymore, courts kind of lost that ability to throw somebody in jail for not paying their child support like they should. And hopefully, with the additional beds, if we get somebody who refuses to pay their child support, they can be put in jail and think about it and realize that, hey, maybe I should pay my child support. So that puts another tool in the bag of the child support office to collect. And I think that's a very important tool, because when I started out, Judge Payton, you always had what we called hate day. Friday morning was in Superior 1, and Friday afternoon was in Circuit Court. And Judge Payton always said, you always asked him, how much can you pay? And then he always raised it by $100, because they could always come up with $100 more. And the idea is you've got to be able to scare people into paying their support, because a lot of people don't want to. They want to take care of their wants before their needs. So I think that's very important, because one of the things that the prosecutor's office does that doesn't get, I would say, much glory, it doesn't get any glory at all, is collect child support for parents who really need it. And oftentimes they get involved because the parent who's required to pay is either reluctant to pay or is refusing to pay, just to mess with the mom or dad, whoever's receiving the money. So having that extra tool in the bag will help quite a bit. And then as far as I agree with Michael, it will give us more beds to deal with recidivism, which is a huge problem. And the big problem with recidivism really it's not really the prosecutor's fault. It's more the state legislature's fault, because years ago, they decided that they didn't want to house people convicted of level 6 felonies anymore. And we had to find creative solutions to that. Well, you take a county like ours where the jail was obsolete when it was built. They've tried to add beds with the transition center and by adding an extra rack to the bunk. But it didn't really work. And that's why we had the overcrowding situation we have now. Hopefully, even with those problems from the state, we can still use those beds and put them to good use to discourage recidivism.
So yeah, that was and Jesse can help expand on this, but the next theme in our conversation, I guess, was, yeah, we have more beds, but as a community, I feel like we've had the conversation where we're trying to reduce the head count of the number of folks that are incarcerated. The United States is, you see the chart, and the U.S. has got, in the top 2 or 3 countries in the world for the per capita number of folks that are jailed.
Yes.
So we're having this discussion, and yes, there's another tool of putting folks in jail, but what can the prosecutor's office do to reduce that, to reduce the head count?
Well, and that's why the problem-solving courts are so important, because when you walk in to court with a criminal defendant, you say, well, judge, yeah, my guy screwed up, but just give him another chance. I don't know if he's worthy of another chance. The judge doesn't know if he's worthy of another chance, but sometimes they give him another chance. The great part in my mind about problem-solving courts is it says, you know what? I don't know if you're worthy of another chance or not, but we're going to put you in drug court. We're going to put you in mental health court. We're going to put you here. And then you are in charge of whether you get a second chance or not. And you control that.
So help me define a term real quick. You're saying a problem-solving court.
Yes.
I know there's a veterans court. I know as a voter, we elect a circuit court judge. We elect superior court judges. Is this a theoretical court that these folks are sitting over, or is it who's in charge of that?
This is like probation, right? Like, is this what you're thinking?
It's like intense probation.
Okay.
So Judge Crane is the Circuit Court 2 judge. He is in charge of both the Veterans Court and the Drug Court. In those courts, in those situations with the Drug Court, you sign a plea agreement that's an open plea agreement. And it says, I will abide by the rules of drug court until I graduate. If I am kicked out of the program, then the judge has the authority to impose any sentence within that plea agreement that he deems is appropriate for your violation and for the law you broke. But you're there every week. You're being intensely monitored. It's probation. It's just very intense
probation plus.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not.
I was going to say, what's Michael's opinion on this? I guess is not to cut you off, but
probation plus. One of the things that's different, a little different about problem-solving courts is there's more of what would be called like a team aspect to it. Mm-hmm. So team members, who they are, let's start with Veterans Court. You're going to have like our local veteran service officer. He's part of the team. Community corrections. There's usually 2 people from community corrections there who are part of the team. The sheriff is part of the team. For Veterans Court, there's a veteran treatment coordinator. We have a great one. He's named Eric Dungan. He does a great job. He works here in Henry County. He also does as the veteran treatment coordinator over in Delaware County.
Do these individuals, I'm not trying to cut you off, but do these individuals, and I was going to ask him, but since you're kind of speaking to this, because you're kind of elaborating on what makes the structure of these things, are those the people who help build the framework from which you guys operate? Like you would operate from? Like you said, like if they fail, then they would be charged. Potentially. So do you work with those people to come up with the structures of all these things?
Jesse, yes. And the prosecutor's office is a team member as well as there's
so it's like a council or a committee or whatever, right? Yeah.
But instead of using council or committee, they use team.
Yeah. I get it. So, because you're on the team to try to reduce the goal, right, is to reduce people going into jail. Like that's what you're trying to do to some degree, at least.
Yes. I mean, the goal is the individual person who's there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But get them turned around.
But yes, the goal is, I mean, you cut down on crime, of course, but Veterans court, it's the team framework. Same with drug court. This team framework, instead of a veteran service officer and a veteran treatment coordinator, you're going to have Meridian. We'll have someone there, be able to help the people with but most of the team members are the same. The mental health court is something I know has been discussed with Judge McCord. One of the issues with the mental health court, we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there in the next 4 years, hopefully sooner. But one of the issues is we need the community partners who are going to be able to team up with us and be able to provide these services. It just can't be the court wants to do it. You need partners in the community to make the teamwork of these problem-solving courts work.
So where did the idea from problem-solving courts come from? Is like, I'm guessing you probably, like other things, right? We went out to other counties and potentially states. I think, I can't remember, McCorkle. I think somebody went out and looked at like different jails, right? Is that like, where did these frameworks come from? This is all new information to me. So
yeah, the state Supreme Court came up with these ideas and they ran some pilot programs. The state Supreme Court is really working toward trying to streamline the process of justice, not just take a ham-fisted one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
They've taken this approach in civil cases as well. We have commercial courts. We have some other examples. One of the things that mental health court is not as widespread as the other courts. Drug courts are pretty widespread. Veterans courts are pretty widespread. Mental health courts, Hancock County currently has a mental health court system.
Does Marion County as well?
I believe they do. Marion County has and Allen County have quite a few problem-solving courts because they obviously
they have resources and they need to manage it, right?
Right.
And they obviously have like mental health. I want to say we all have, like, probably proportionally it may be the same, but it's this problem of scale.
A community of 1 million people versus a community.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's the problem of scale, and unfortunately, probably in our counties, like the mental health people are getting the short end of the stick because we just don't have the resources to take care of them yet.
Right. Well, and that's another thing to consider is that, and it kind of blew my mind when Jay said 90% of the inmates have mental health problems. And there's a good chance that's why they're there, because I know from my work with criminal defendants that a lot of the drug problems started as self-medicating for a mental health issue.
Right.
I take this because it helps me with my anxiety. It helps me with my mood disorder. And I just feel better when I'm on it because I have all of these problems. And what the mental health court, which I would commit to starting to work on day one, is that it would give. And the other problem we have too is a lot of these mental health problems require expensive medication.
Right. Yeah.
And some people don't have insurance, so they get what they can off the street or off their buddy, and then they get caught, and then they're in the system. But if we get them the treatment that they need and we give them the opportunity to use medical science to help them as opposed to chemical experimentation, they would probably stay out of the system going forward.
Yeah.
And the good part is if you look at these other counties like Hancock County, Marion, the places who have that particular problem-solving court, you can model your program off of them, know what their pitfalls are and all of that. And, it is what it is. And then you can solve the problems better.
So in advance of this show, I'm just an idiot that sells steel during the week, and I host a podcast once a week. So I don't have intense knowledge of a prosecutor's office. But I did reach out to a friend of ours. Craig DaCosta is a patron and a listener, and has been for many years. And he was the elected prosecutor of Kauai County, Hawaii, and served about 10 years. So some of the questions that are coming that I've included here are the themes that he thought that we should talk on and talk about. And the biggest issue he said, ask these guys about what their views are on incarceration of nonviolent offenders. So, we've talked on this show on the financial side about building a new jail facility, and the head count's high, and the state's shoving all the level 6s down. So I want to start with you, Michael, and talk about the views. And I know the prosecutor's office has some control, but legislators tell you other, the law is the law, et cetera. From the prosecutor's office, what's the view on incarcerating nonviolent offenders?
What my view is the goal is a nonviolent offender. We should get them, try to provide them services so there's not going to, they're going to be able to correct the problems. That's the goal. Now, the problem you run into is the people who continue to violate. I mean, you give up people opportunities. We talked about it. One option the prosecutor's office has, someone charged on a low-level nonviolent offense, you can do an agreement to withhold prosecution. You can start there, okay? Well, it doesn't change. A year later, they get arrested again. Okay, well, then you can maybe try probation. Okay?
But in theory, say they got arrested, and the next thing we're going to get into is possession of cannabis. So they get arrested for possession of cannabis, and then something happens, and a year later, another nonviolent thing comes up. Mm-hmm. But then they're starting to tick the boxes and go further into the system.
Ticking the boxes is exactly right. What happens is you have people who, I mean, one of the things the court can order is what's called a pre-sentence investigative report. And there are boxes on there. What's been tried in the past? Let's let the court know what we've tried in the past. Have we tried probation? Have we tried a problem-solving court? Have we tried agreements to withhold prosecution? Have we tried these things? Now, have we tried community corrections? Have we at least given them the opportunity where they've been court-ordered to go to treatment? And they've had someone to work with, and this person will help them try to get in contact with a service provider to try to address these issues that is causing these nonviolent offenses. But unfortunately, there does become a time when there's just no more. Sadly, sadly, I've heard this statement. Some people, they are serving a life sentence on the installment plan, and that's just how they've decided to live their life. And we can try to give them all the opportunities that we can. And we hope that it clicks sometime. We hope that we don't know what it takes to click. Someone would be a real rich person if they knew what it took to get through to each individual person. But if we were able to do that, because the number one goal is rehabilitation. You get people rehabilitated, then they're not committing crimes. That's good for everybody.
I appreciate the empathy I'm hearing from both of you in talking through this. Tony, on nonviolent offenders and jail time, or incarceration.
Once again, like everything, it's a matter of degrees. Are we talking about misdemeanor nonviolent offenses, level 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Well, obviously, there's no one nonviolent offenses, but nonviolent, it all depends on the circumstances. Because of certain funding issues. And most of the time, if you have a misdemeanor nonviolent offense, it's your first offense. The agreement to hold prosecution is one of the better tools that can be used. But there comes a point at which there's an old joke from the Naked Gun movie about this is your last chance, and not one of those Steve Howe Major League Baseball last chances either. There's too many second chances. There's second chance. There's second chances. There's fourth second chances. And there comes a point at which somebody just has to go away. They don't want to be a part of society. They don't want to follow the rules. And even in nonviolent offenses, there can be people who are hurt by it, financially, emotionally. And I think we have to look before we just place certain crimes under the rubric of nonviolent. We have to look and see if there's a victim, because anytime there's a victim, we have to make sure that we recognize that person does have some damage and see if we can't try to right that damage.
So you said finding if there's a victim. There are what some folks would call victimless crimes as well. In Ryan Mears, this is the next thing we had on the list, was as soon as he was appointed a prosecutor, and ultimately I think he's been reelected in Marion County, but he said, hey, we're going to stop prosecuting cannabis. Any possession, whatever. Yes, the law says this, but we're gonna stop doing that. Yeah. The legislature has tried to take steps, and I don't think they've actually been able to get anything into law to stop the prosecutor's office from doing that. Is there any view on something like that happening in Henry County?
Well, I can just tell you that when it comes to looking for a role model as prosecutor, Ryan Mears is at the bottom of the list. He's a terrible prosecutor.
Sure. And the reason, obviously, in Marion County, it's the top headline and grabbing. Nobody knows who you probably would, who the Tipton County prosecutor is, or who it is in Warren County, et cetera. But Marion County's a million people.
The issue with not prosecuting simple marijuana possession is right now the procedure is the procedure is that you're issued a summons, you come to court, you do an agreement to withhold prosecution, and you take a 16-hour marijuana education course, you pay a fine, and in 6 months the charges are dismissed. I believe that's an excellent model to follow. I would continue to do that. Once again, the law only works if people respect it. And I know there are attitudes on cannabis that a lot of people have that it should be legal, but it's not. But I'm also not going to treat it like you killed somebody. You get caught, you pay your fine, you move on, and as long as you don't become a repeat offender, we're just going to act like it never happened. Which is basically what an agreement to withhold prosecution is. Let's act like this never happened. And
it's some pamarwork, but
16 hours.
But after a year,
it falls
you can
off.
get it expunged.
Okay.
16 hours of I'm marginally interested in seeing what the content of the educational course would be.
I am also interested, but not enough to spend 16 hours looking into it.
That's what I said, marginally interested. All right, Michael.
A lot of content.
And
it's $85.
Your views?
And how well is it working?
I went to the open house for the House 54 districts on Tuesday night, and I was talking to a gentleman who lives in southern Henry County. He was telling me about how he moved here 20 years ago from Indianapolis because he didn't want to live like that. I think of myself, I don't want to be Indianapolis. I don't want to live in Indianapolis. We don't want to be Indianapolis in Henry County. And so my views on what the prosecutor in Marion County, when he made his announcement he wasn't going to prosecute marijuana, first, as a prosecutor, you don't get to decide what the laws are. You're not a super legislator. You have to follow the law. If we don't respect the law, then we don't have anything. So you do have to follow the law. And some of the legislation I think you briefly mentioned about maybe trying to take prosecutor discretion away and maybe having the attorney general get involved in local county cases. And I disagree with that though as well, because
it's a slippery slope,
yes,
right? Because if you have the state saying that you have to do something in one case because you're targeting it could potentially be applied in other areas.
Yes. But I think that just reaffirms what I've mentioned. That's why you need someone with a high integrity, good ethical standards, and as well as just good common sense. And that's why you need that in a prosecutor. It should just make common sense. If you're going to be the chief law enforcement officer in your county, you just can't go out and say, "Oh, we're not going to enforce this law because I disagree with it." I mean, that just has to be there has to be some. That's why the prosecutor needs common sense.
Yeah,
there's
there's legalities around wearing a seatbelt too, and it's a $25 ticket, and it's. I'm just trying to figure out where we are in the on the scale here.
Yeah, it's like, do you send them to jail or do you fine them? Like, I think that's what you're trying to figure out, right? Yeah. And
and from Tony, it sounds like okay, you get one crack at it, but come back a year later, and all of a sudden it's going to be a lot more severe.
Right. Well, and going back to, I think you asked about the taking away the prosecutorial discretion by the state. The prosecutor's office, and this is why it's so important who's in the office, because the prosecutor's office is one of those offices that really has you can't appeal anywhere. The prosecutor makes a decision to not charge. There's no charges. And that's why you need somebody who's going to be aggressive, not let cases sit around. If there's a crime against a child, you need somebody who's going to go after that crime, who's going to file it, who's going to pursue it. And you can't have passivity. You can't have serious crimes or even really any crimes being given away because of not going to trial or because it would be too hard on someone to be there. It would be too much work. You got to have somebody who's willing to go in and say, look, this needs to be tried, or your guy needs to take a plea agreement, and this is the offer, period. And that's what I can offer. Is I offer that no nonsense. Let's get this thing going. We've got victims here who need help, and we need to protect people from those who would do them harm. And one of the things that has always kind of struck me is that a person who commits a violent crime for the first time, it's probably just the first time they've been caught. And that's really true with child molesters and people like that is, if you have the chance to get them, if you have the chance to take them down, if you have the chance to charge them, you need to do it because people need to know who this person is. And you've got to make sure that those people go to prison.
What percentage of the caseload is dealing with that severity of what's coming to the prosecutor? Are we talking 5%? Are we talking 20% of your life?
Yeah.
Because I think we're talking about some of the extremes and the importance you see there. But for the average citizen, how much?
So there's around 600 or 700 misdemeanors that are filed every year. I believe that there are around
like 2 a day.
Yeah, like that.
Almost.
More on the weekends.
Of course.
More on the weekends. But and there are around 500 to 600 level 6 felonies every year. That's what Michael handles. Based on what I've seen, you're probably looking at around it's probably 100 or so fives, and then you get lower and lower as you go up because there's less and less. Most of the fives, fours, threes, and twos you see relate to drug possession or drug dealing because those are graded based upon the amount. Typically, an amount causes it to go from a 6 to a 5, and then if you got a dealing on that, that makes it go up to a 3. So you basically have a 2-class jump for dealing versus possession. And so the amount of violent crime that you see in a year is probably not counting what you would call level 6 felonies, because those would include batteries with moderate bodily injury, domestic battery in the presence of a child or causing moderate bodily injury. You would probably see maybe 70 cases a year of actual violent, serious crime above a level 6 felony. And then you run into with the level 6 felony, the state doesn't want them.
Right.
You have to keep them, and you have to be creative in how you deal with it.
So doing basic math in my head, maybe 5% is of a 5 or above in the way you view the case.
So do you agree with these numbers, Michael? I'm like trying to watch your face as people are talking. Like, do you agree with these numbers, or
you could say there's approximately 1,500 criminal cases filed in Henry County. Now, the percentage what I would consider violent, when we talk about violent, you're going to talk about, I would say, robbery, burglary, anything causing a serious bodily injury, offenses against children, murder, obviously. So the percentage, 5%, maybe 3 to 5%, I would say. But what's important to remember, that's just because that's the amount of cases, the amount of resources and time you're going to invest in them is a lot greater.
For sure, yeah.
Both the cases, there were two jury trials in 2021, and both those cases were one was a child offense and one was a sex crime.
Right.
Okay, and that's where the resources have to be applied when we talk about.
Well, you're not going to take them to court unless you know you can get them, right? Like that's the goal. At least that's what the TV tells me. Like, we're not going to prosecute till we have enough evidence, right? Like it's. And maybe you can help me understand that more. This is me thinking about TV, but like we're not going to go to prosecution until we have enough evidence. So
you're going to see, there's going to be differences. Okay,
sure.
Federal crimes, everything I understand about the federal system, they're not going to get involved in a crime until they're convinced that they have all the evidence they need.
Yeah, they couldn't lose the case. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now with your local offenses, due to there's a lot of factors that sometimes after a crime's filed, you're still continuing to investigate. You're just still trying to put some pieces together, and so sometimes in a state, and sometimes your cases. You might charge a case. I'd never charge a case if I didn't believe there was evidence that could convince someone beyond a reasonable doubt that someone committed a crime.
It sounds like you almost are inclined to charge if you're on the edge, you're almost inclined to charge to go down that path versus if you don't charge, then there's no backstop, right? It's what Tony was saying is that as a prosecutor, and that's why you choose to be aggressive, is that if your office doesn't charge, nobody's going to take action on that. Is
right. And I can tell you from the defense attorney's perspective, a lot of the time we'll look at our client and we'll say, they got you dead to rights. Let's work out a plea. And where you get into that trial mode is when there's some questions about the evidence, or you have conflicting stories with no physical evidence. You're relying on things that could fall apart on the stand. But for the most part, a lot of these cases boil down to those were the drugs. Those were on you, or you were driving, you were drunk. That's why you see high conviction rates, is because the evidence is there. But as you get higher up the ladder on charges, you sometimes have shakier evidence, especially because of the gradation that you have of, you go from a 6 for a battery to a 5, depending on the outcome, depending on the injury. So, and then you depending on the circumstances, a child molest can be all the way from a 4 to a 1. And in a lot of those cases, it's just, he said, the child said, or she said, the child said. And sometimes you have to go with what the child said as proof and hope it holds up on the stand. And as a defense attorney, you go to trial hoping that what the child says doesn't hold up on the stand, you see. But you cannot hold a case to the standard of, I know 100% when I filed this, I'm going to win. Because if you do that, you won't file some of the cases where there's not as much evidence. And the other part is, I've been in cases, one in this county, and Joe and I had a disagreement about it, where the testimony, my client was charged, and the testimony of the alleged victim fell apart in deposition. Not the prosecutor's fault. She changed her story. But you do have that risk, and you're never going to know, because people say things a lot. And then when they're under oath and the judge is there, or
the studio lights are on,
studio lights are on, somebody's there questioning them, holding their feet to the fire, and they're now under oath, and they hear that word, penalties of perjury. They're like, maybe I was not. Maybe it wasn't like I said. And we just have to go on from there. But the higher the stakes, it seems like the harder the case. And you can't be afraid of working hard and taking that chance, because another thing that I know a lot of prosecutors rely on is their conviction record. And there are 2 conviction records. There's the cases filed versus cases convicted, and then there's the trial wins and losses. And a lot of prosecutors jealously guard that record. And I guess the thing about it is, at the end of the day, if I am elected to this position, I will not be afraid to take those chances. And if I get beat in re-election because I took chances, I'm okay with that, because I know that the chances that I took probably saved some children from being victimized again, some people from being brutalized again. And that's my goal. is to make sure that, people are safe at the end of the day, whether they appreciate it or not.
Very good. Michael, anything else on this before we shift topics?
One thing I've always stuck with me, one of my first year I had 7 jury trials. That's normal. People want to test you, make sure that you have the ability to do the job. If you're going to be able to present a case to a jury, I took 7 cases to jury trial. Tony's absolutely right. You call a child to the witness stand. I did a child molest trial my first year. You call a child to the witness stand. Defendant victimized 2 children. One of them, brave little girl, just able to testify her little heart out. And I'll never forget. She had a defense attorney asked her, did it hurt when this happened to her? And the poor girl she started crying because she knows what she's supposed to say, and she has to tell the truth. And thankfully, jury saw through that little girl, and that girl's natural reaction was able to help us get a conviction on that. But the other little girl, we worked with her to try to get her to be able to express what happened to her. And she did better every time of trying to open it up to everyone. And so we had 2 counts. One was a guilty, one was a not guilty. So thankfully the one guy with the one guilty, he was still being able to be punished for what he did and be held accountable. But that's something that always sticks with me. And that's what my experience brings to the table is I've been able to work with witnesses. I've been able to prepare them for what to expect when they go to court and be able to work with them and hopefully they'll make sure I can do everything I can to be able to make sure that they can tell the facts as they see it. When you're a trial lawyer, one of the things I always remember is everyone sees things differently. We're all going to explain this whole situation. We've all lived through it. It's on video. We're all going to explain it just a little bit differently. There's going to be things that stick out more than other things to us. Doesn't mean anything's less true than others. It's just that's how we all operate. But that's one of the key jobs of a prosecutor when you get into court is you want to make sure you do everything you can to help people be able to express themselves truthfully. Victims of the crime, law enforcement officers are professional. They go out there and they work hard every day to keep our community safe. Some of them need more direction in trying to be able to express what occurred and what their investigation uncovered, though. So you have to have that experience and be able to do that.
I do want to give another thank you to the sponsor we have for the show. Big Bounce Inflatables has stepped up and is sponsoring this week of the Candidate Series. They've been with us a few different times. So if you're into a big family party, any wedding, I think my brother had a bounce house one time at his own about his 32nd birthday party. You get that kind of thing from Big Bounce. We've also had support through the Candidate Series from Wyland's Flowers and the Slick Pickle Party Bus. So lots of folks helping to make this show possible for us. One more area that Craig had said that he wanted me to ask about, and it was a little bit more in line with the Hawaiian law that they dealt with, because I think they had to actually register handguns in the state of Hawaii, and I know Indiana doesn't require that. But we do have some changes with concealed carry, where the governor is potentially going to be signing this. I guess he did sign the bill where we no longer have to have a handgun permit. It's just your constitutional right. You have constitutional carry starting in July. Any thoughts on the legal ramifications of that, and from the prosecutor's view of anybody can have a handgun in Indiana now?
Any thoughts? I don't think it's probably. I don't know how much it's going to change. I don't think July 1st, everyone's going to be like, oh, I can carry my handgun now. The people who've wanted to carry their handgun, they've had this ability to get a license, and they've been able to, just like get a car. I'm sure that's how most people, or get a driver's license. I'm sorry. But, I'm sure that's how most people carried it. So a lot of people have already been carrying their handguns, and they do it responsibly and safely, and they do it. And so that's all going to continue. I don't think we're going to see a big change. The people who weren't supposed to carry them are going to carry them anyways. And the people who are, who have been carrying them legally, they're just going to still continue their safe behavior with them. What concerns me is it's going to make law enforcement's job. I'm concerned it's going to make their job harder, because they're still, just because you have the right to carry a gun, there's going to be exceptions to that. People who've had that right taken away if you've been convicted of a crime of domestic violence, even a misdemeanor, you still lose the right to possess a firearm.
This law doesn't restore that.
No, because it's a federal violation as well. And so you're going to get that. But no, this law doesn't. There's exceptions to the law.
Is there technology to help them understand that when they're pulling people over?
Is there?
So you're saying like maybe that doesn't exist yet, right? Like, is that is that a technological problem? I guess it's like I'm a technology guy, so I'm like, is there a technological problem if you're an officer and you're stopping? Do they have the ability to easily understand if they should or should not have a firearm?
If they should or should not have.
Yeah, because you're saying like if they have some sort of battery or whatever, right?
Like some officers now, they have like something they can point on a driver's or on a license plate and be like, okay, is the person who this license plate is assigned to, or they have valid driver?
Right.
And if not, but no. So there's some codes that law enforcement officers use, like they're going to be like domestic violence. So it's going to give them a heads up. I mean, like a code now is someone's got a personal protection permit.
Right.
And so their technology, yes, it's good, but it's going to change. It's going to change. There's good. There isn't everything. The world's about change, and then it's about adapting to that change. Right. And so, of course, there's going to be systems put into place to help adapt to that. But that's just my concern initially, because it's like the governor signed it Monday. Right. So, but no, that's one concern I would have as I do have right now would be that.
Tony, any thoughts on that change to the law?
Yes, I'm a longtime gun collector, so I know the responsibility that goes with owning a gun. I don't understand what all the fuss was about. I could carry a long gun in my vehicle without a permit, and I don't know what the difference is. I would say that as far as law enforcement goes, I don't know a law enforcement officer that's a road officer that when they pull up to the car, they don't assume that the driver and every occupant in there is armed, because it's not just guns that could be dangerous to an officer. An officer sticks his hand to get the license, got a knife, switchblade, or something like that. We had a security officer up at the Justice Center who got slashed with a driver's license. So I'm not worried that it's going to affect law enforcement, because law enforcement already assumes you're armed. And I think, as Michael said, the thing to remember is all constitutional carry did was take away the requirement to have a permit. You still have to pass a background check to buy a weapon. If I want to sell you one of my weapons and I know you have a felony, a mental health issue, a drug issue, and I sell it to you and then you go and do something stupid with it, I'm getting charged. So this didn't take away any of the responsibility for responsibility in gun ownership and gun sales, and it didn't take away the ability to keep someone who shouldn't have a gun from owning a gun. All the permit did was say you cannot have it on you out in public or in your car. You could still have it at your fixed place of business or at your home without a permit.
Right.
So all this did was basically allow people to carry out in public without a permit, and they could do that with long guns anyway, so I don't see what the big deal was.
All right. The next one, I guess, it's a theoretical question, and it's more educational. In the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of wild accusations from the general public about our elected officials and allegations of corruption or this or that. And I'm not sure how much truth there is to any of it, but I wanted to hear that, I guess, if anybody truly believes that there's an issue and there's corruption in your local government, does the prosecutor's office have any role in investigating that and looking into that? Or would that be who holds a county commissioner accountable, a county sheriff accountable, a county council person accountable? Is that the local prosecutor? Is that the state? Where does that responsibility lie?
Well, if there's a crime committed,
right,
the responsibility lies with the prosecutor. That's where the prosecutor's oversight responsibility is when people in these positions of public trust, if they do violate the law, they have to be held accountable to the law as anyone else is. And so that would be the position that what the prosecutor would the oversight function would be that you would have to just if there's been a law violated, if there's been an accusation. I was watching the news. I grew up I spent some time in Frankfort, Indiana. They had to charge they charged the local sheriff with a crime there, and the Clinton County sheriff was charged. And so that would be the prosecutor's responsibility of oversight is just investigate crime, same as any one of us here.
Is whether you're an elected official or not, it's the same.
Yes.
Same responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, if you were doing something in your elected position as part of your duties and you still committed a crime in doing that, then yes.
I know we had a township trustee a few years ago that did some jail time for some issues in their office. Any thoughts on that, Tony?
Yeah, one of the things that I've observed with numerous statewide corruption issues is there was a case out of Hancock County where the sheriff was charged with some sort of corruption, and immediately everybody started complaining about, well, the Greenfield police commissioner had it out for him. Well, the prosecutor had it out for him, and it was all just a big way to embarrass him. I think it's very important, and Joe has done this on at least 3 occasions I'm aware of. He did it with the Knightstown police officer. He did it with the Shields prosecution, where if there's somebody in county government or in and all county officials are pretty much
it's a
political.
Community.
It's a political situation. You're always better off to have the state police investigate and do a special prosecutor appointment so that you can't be accused of grinding an axe, political payback, or something.
Just to remove
like
the bias, right? Yeah.
Not necessarily bias. I mean, I could not have any bias like or dislike of an elected official, but it's the perception.
Well, it's the perception, yeah. So it's
and we did actually have a question in the chat about
neutrality.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's
about the Knightstown police
I was trying
situation.
to think there's definitely something for it. I couldn't remember the term,
But like, see, there's a chance that if there's an elected official who's charged or even accused of a crime, that I know that person.
right.
Okay, but if I get Philip Cavanis or Brent Eaton from another county, they probably don't.
Right.
Or if they're investigating somebody there, I probably don't know that person either.
It's also that you're removing yourself from so you guys represent a system, right? Like you represent
Correct.
the system, and you don't want another member of the system to defend other members of the system. Like it's a bad problem. So,
you just got to remove.
You need to remove yourself from that situation and be like, look, other people are going to be investigating this. That way we're hands off and we're not trying to defend or try to take throw a coup if you want to call it that. But like you're not going to try to like defend it or prosecute against it. You're just like, I'm out.
It completely removes,
neutralizes it. Yeah,
exactly. It completely removes the allegations of political witch hunt or political payback.
Sure.
And I think that because what we've talked about before of the prosecutor having so much power, you really, as prosecutor, don't want to be perceived as abusing that power for your own end.
Right.
And that's why those allegations of, even if they're false, even if I have no opinion about the person, you're still going to get that.
You're painting a picture.
Exactly.
And people don't care about the truth. We've learned all that in the last
4 years.
8 years. Yeah.
True.
Oh, it's probably a tale as long as time. But
it is, but it
we've
just seems extremely present.
It's pretty exaggerated.
I think
right now.
the social media is making it more omnipresent.
Completely new local government.
It's omnipresent. Let's say that it's everywhere.
I was thinking nationally.
That too. Across the board. It's across the board.
And even in this podcast, you guys wouldn't even understand. No, I'm just joking.
Jesse thinks I'm corrupt. I'm obviously getting rich off the patron dollars. Whatever. We did have another question that came in on the chat room that I wanted to give some love before we get to the end of the show. John Phillips, a member of our Patreon group, he was asking about the crowdsourced bail projects. We've seen folks that are getting bailed out. People come together and say, "Hey, so and so's in jail. They're awaiting trial." And they'll get together and they'll bail somebody out, and then potentially in this case there was a violent one of the folks that got bailed out in another community had a violent attack on a police officer. Is this? I guess it's a general question, but crowdsourced bail projects, is that something that communities should be seeking and trying to get involved with and do, or is that look, you and your own need to handle your own bail?
I don't think that I would never donate to a crowdsourced bail project. Just to speak, you always hesitate just as answer for all circumstances. I don't think, especially when I think about the bail project that we've heard about in Marion County, where there's been some support trying to post bond for offenders, and these end up being violent offenders who go out and recommit. And I think bond should be something that's personal responsible for. Purpose of bond, we have to remember, is to ensure appearance in court. So you need a bondsman. Our local bond schedule does it two ways, or has what's called a split bond. It's surety bond, which has a bondsman on tap, and then cash. And we want responsibility. So a bad thing about this is a crowdsourced bond. There is no responsibility to the person.
You don't have skin in the game.
Yeah, you have no skin in the game any longer, and or someone close to you has no skin in the game. Yeah, if 100 people on the internet give you money to bond, who cares? Your mom's going to lose her house because you posted a property bond. That's probably going to change your thought process about whether you're going to go to court or not. And so those are just some of my thoughts. But crowdsourced bond, I would hope as a community that wouldn't be something that we would support.
All right. Any thoughts from you, Tony?
Yeah, crowdsourced bond funding should be illegal. It is one of the worst ideas for our criminal justice system possibly ever. It's another symptom of a disease that's starting to affect the criminal justice system, and that's wokeness, where we don't want bad people to pay for what they've done because of some weak excuse about their upbringing or where they came from or something else. I don't care why you hurt somebody, why you killed somebody. You hurt them, you killed them, you need to pay. And the one you're talking about where the fellow was freed by crowdsourced bond funding and then shot that police officer in the throat, he's going to have that voice box now because of all the damage that was done. If the people who funded that bail or that bond would have thought about what they were doing, that police officer would still be okay. And once again, that is a Marion County thing, which I don't know that we have that particular part of the woke disease headed out this way. But I can tell you right now, the people of Henry County, they do, for the most part, respect the law. And they're not going to go for this. And the other problem with crowdsourced bond funds is they're not coming from Marion County. They're coming from all over. You set up your little bond page and say, give me some money. Well, you get people from California, Colorado, New York, people who it's none of their business getting into this. And my favorite was, I believe that the crowdsource particular platform that was used in that case said, well, hey, I know something happened, but 75% of the people we bail out don't reoffend before they go to trial. It's like 75%, really? That's a good number to you? It's clear that the other problem with this is they're not screening the people. They have people who they're bailing out who recidivism.
Right.
And that is a huge problem in our system right now, especially given the fact that you have overcrowded jails and you don't have a lot of incarceration options because of the state on the level 6 felonies. And that's where a lot of the cases are. Like Michael said, you've got about 600 level 6 felonies every year. And we have to do something with those people, and we can't put them all in jail.
All right. The last item that I have in our program side, and you guys can obviously we can talk as long as y'all need to on other items that we haven't covered. Michael, did I hear you say that we had two jury trials in Henry County last year?
Yes, criminal.
And I assume that's because of COVID that the number is less, or is that typical? Is it 2 or 3 a year?
Is that more? I guess that's the question.
I would say that was low because of COVID.
Okay. Yeah.
So what should the expectation be? I know when I was a Rush County resident, I got a jury summons one time in my life. That was it. I've lived in Henry County as an adult for over 15 years, and I've never had the privilege of coming down to hang out with y'all. How often should this be happening? Should citizens that are listening, if they get in that situation, did I just unplug you with my foot?
Maybe.
Yep, it did. That's all right.
I was going to say,
I'll fix it. I'll fix it.
I want to piggyback on your question too.
You jump on there, and I'll plug Tony back in.
I guess so. Maybe it may not be a better question, but if obviously you're both attorneys, so you guys go to these conventions, and depending, I guess, like on how you approach things, like, is there I would imagine like there's like, hey, per X amount of people, like there should be so many jury trials, like metrics like that. Is that a thing? Is that not a thing? Like, is that? I don't know. Like, to me,
Jesse's left brain, so analytical. Is there a certain number that you're supposed to do to make sure you're doing your job?
Like to be like, is our county like crazy? Are we like not crazy? Are we really crazy? Like, there should be something to be like, oh, like if I was in your job, I'd be like, yeah, we're par for the course. Like, we live in a crazy county, or maybe like this is free coasting, easy money. Like I don't have to do much. Like, I just want to know, like, what
Jesse, my brain works like yours. I love baseball. I love to look at the analytical stats about,
Michael, that's not going to help you get elected saying your brain works like Jesse's. I don't know how much you've listened.
You've just lost everything.
Just the analytical part.
Over.
But congratulations, sir.
But just the analytical part.
Right.
And no, there's no science, of this is what you should be doing. Any standards you see, it's just something that people made up, just trying to come up with what they seem would be appropriate.
I was going to say, I would imagine there's some sort of data scientist to be like, look, all right, so based off of the, median income and blah, 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 like you should have so many jury trials. And if not, then perhaps you might have like corrupt police or police that are pushing too hard, blah, blah, blah. Like you can come up with your own reasons, right? That's data science. Like you can come up with your own hypothesis of what's going on, and then you kind of test and blah. And I didn't know if like those are like things that you guys see if you go to these conventions, and to just like I don't know. I would think that like people are trying to be like pragmatic about approaching these subjects, to be like, we don't always want to put people in jail. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm not in this field, but maybe they are like but it would be like, like we all know there's pressure on county jails. So like what options do you guys, right? I'm sure like there's these conventions. Part of it is, hey, here's some different programs. Like you could try to think about how you're going to approach these problems. So that was my thing, is like, is Henry County par for the course based off of our demographic?
Are we wildly average?
Yeah. Are we wildly average? Are we wildly wild? Or are we wildly not? Like, we're just cool. Like it's, cause like in the streets, there's air quotes for those listening. It's, we're like one of the meth capitals of the world. That's just what people talk all the time, which I don't know if is necessarily true, but That's what, like, there's those jokes. So like, how are we, like from your guys' perspective?
So go ahead, Michael.
I would just say, anecdotally, talking to other prosecutors throughout the county when I go to these conferences, throughout the state when I go to these conferences, we are, as the prosecutor's office reputation is a very good one in Henry County. Sometimes you go to the conferences and you'll hear, well, we haven't had a jury trial in 4 years. And that's going to be dependent on, and that's why the prosecutor is going to set the tone for the office. And so that's why you need someone who's not going to be afraid to go to trial.
Right.
But to answer your question, one of the things you have to do is you're just a numbers person, over 1,500 criminal trials. Court's time. You have to look at, you only have so much of the court's time.
Right.
1,500
criminal cases. I'm sorry. If I said trials,
but what I think what you're saying is that you don't have the bandwidth. If everybody wanted to go to trial, you can't get 1,500 through in a year in the county.
And let's cut out all the misdemeanors. Let's cut out all the level 6 felonies even. That's going to get you still down to 300 or so. Okay. And then at the maximum you would have is going to be about 150. We have 3 courts. They set jury trials 1 day a week. So maybe 150 in a year. So you're just going to tell all these other cases, well, we're not going to do anything else.
Right.
And we have to understand when we talk about the court system, and I know Tony briefly touched on this as well in reference to a different county, but the criminal is just a small part of all the other things the court system does as well. And there's also other things that the demands on the court system.
It's just shocking to me that I guess in 1,500 cases that only 2 got to the point where they wanted to go to jury trial. If I'm trying to defend I don't know. It feels like a whole lot of people are pleading out versus actually going the distance and saying, I am not taking that level 6 because I don't believe in it. They sign and they move on.
Well, part of that is we're blessed. We have great law enforcement officers. They do great work. They do great work on the road. They do great investigative work. Okay. And so that's going to be part of it. Okay. And also we talked about, we use other things for the misdemeanors in the lower level felonies as well. And so we use other options such as the agreements to withhold prosecution we talked about. And we talked about probation and community corrections. And so sometimes to resolve cases, and this is just the reality, to resolve cases, I have to know what I think each judge is, and I have to have a pretty good knowledge of what each judge is going to do. And I have to make sure it's probably, to get an offer, it's got to be a little bit less maybe than what the court would do. Okay. And that's just going to resolve these cases we've talked about, nonviolent offenses, drug possession. Okay. The lower level cases that we do, but you do need to be firm on the violent crimes. You need to be firm, and you need to have your word mean something and stands for something. And so people know this is it. And so I think that's trying to explain how the cases do get resolved. That many cases with that.
Tony?
So one of the things that you've got to understand, when I came here in 2004, and Kit Crane was the prosecutor, and he was prosecutor until 2012. And he was very thorough on making sure that before a case was filed, the evidence was tight. And for those first few years, trials were fairly rare. And they were almost always convictions, because when the case was filed, it was ready to go to trial. Nothing was really left to chance any more than it is with realizing people are involved. We've kind of seen that maybe go away a little bit, where there's a charge filed and a hope for a plea agreement. And then I've had a few cases dismissed at the last minute. before we went to trial because the evidence fell apart. And if a thorough investigation had been done, it wouldn't have fallen apart. It wouldn't have been charged. And the other thing is the trial serves, for lack of a better term, as a warning to a defendant of if you don't take this plea, it's going to get a whole lot worse. I had a defendant here not too long ago reject a plea that was 4 years of home detention, 4 years of probation. He wanted to take it to trial. He took it to trial, lost, ended up in prison for, I believe, 16 years. So you've got to have that warning about if you choose to go to trial, this is what happens. You should take this plea. It will be better. But you also have to have your evidence tight, like I said. The other thing that's kind of floating around there is you cannot offer weak plea agreements. And there's a perception in this community that that's what goes on. And there's no reason that, out of 500 cases a year, you would have no level 6 felony trials. I believe the last 3 or 4 years. Now, COVID was there for 18 months of it, but 3 or 4 years, somebody should have had a trial. And that's not what's happened. And we need to be stronger on our plea agreements, and we need to draw lines in the sand because I had a case, I took it over in 18 and it didn't get resolved until this year. So, and that's because we were dancing around a plea agreement. And as prosecutor, I would just go to trial on something like that. Once the drugs are identified as drugs and I have my evidence ready to go, I would start objecting to continuances and say, we've got to get these people out because we've got a guy, I think he's been sitting over there for 4 years on a level 2 felony and in jail, that is. And all he's doing is taking up a bed that could go to somebody who we need to put there.
One more practical question before we go to final thoughts, Tony. For the folks that you're representing now as the defense attorney, and if you change sides of the conversation, what happens? What happens for your cases and your clients? So your existing clients.
If I have a client who has taken who's under a probation sentence or something like that, and they were to violate that, I would have to have a special prosecutor appointed. I would have to have a special prosecutor appointed for any case that I touched, where the facts that I may have learned in representing that person would play a role.
Yeah. Well,
once again, it's the perception. It may not muddy the waters at all, but it would be the perception that it did.
Right.
Because like right now, I had a case last year where she was charged with a possession crime, but she had an enhancement based upon a prior conviction. Well, Judge Crane was the prosecutor during that case, so we had to move out of his court. Even though it's a yes or no question, there's still that perceived bias from the prior one. So it's just kind of being absolutely fair. And then typically you would know who to call to help you out, because if they got into a situation where they needed a special prosecutor, they dump their case on you. Right. It's kind of a bad trade. Like the Carson Wentz trade.
Oh boy. Which one?
Hey.
All right. That's a wonderful segue to producer
Chris. We're not talking
about
that Carson Wentz trade.
Which one?
He's the Commanders fan in the room.
I got shafted.
Hey, my wife's a Commanders fan, so she feels your pain.
Yeah, I got completely shafted in that trade. But anyways, my final thought is very simple. So I am 32 years old, and I have never received a jury paperwork where I have to fill it out or anything with my previous last name while I lived in Henry County.
So you for those that are new in the room or the not the longtime audience members, you were born as Chris Guffey, but you took your wife's name and you're now Chris Staten. So you're saying
and
that
I live in Delaware County now.
When you went from the Guffey family to the Staten family, all of a sudden they're willing to use you for jury trials.
They're willing to call me. They haven't called me yet, but they've like, hey, you have to fill out your paperwork now. I'm just curious. when does like the prosecutor, they go, oh, look, that's a Guffey. I'm just marking them right off the list. Not even bringing them in the courtroom. Is that how this works?
No, that's not how it works. They use a few tools to create the jury list, but they use a driver's license and voter rolls to create that list. And you just haven't been lucky enough. You weren't lucky enough to get chosen when you lived in Henry County.
And I can tell you, I had a civil trial one time, and it was in Judge Payton's court, and Judge Willis was in the jury list. And then I have gotten the questionnaire that they sent out for quarterly before, and at the bottom it said, is there any other reason you should not be on a jury? I said, well, yeah, if as a practicing attorney, I wouldn't put somebody like me on a jury.
It's very fair.
And my wife says, well, I've never gotten a summons. And I said, do you really think any lawyer in this county would let you on a jury?
Man, that's difficult to know. I mean, you may be viewed as being impartial or, ready to go, well-educated. Michael, you have any final thoughts for me? Any closing statements? I guess if folks want to volunteer for the campaign, if they want to help go door to door, if they want to learn more, how do they get involved?
You can find me on Facebook. It's under Michael J. Mahoney. You could be glad to have anyone look me up and find some information there to find out more about who I am and about my experience and about how I want to serve our county. I did want to say, I just want to thank you everyone for being here. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm really glad we had this opportunity to have a conversation about future goals and hopes for the prosecutor's office. We're going to have a new prosecutor January 1st, 2023. So it's been a great opportunity to share what my hopes and visions are for that office. And I really do appreciate it. I want to say, one thing I've heard, level 6s, there's changing July 1st. We're going to be able to send some more level 6s to the prison. But I did want to say that. But I would just really appreciate anyone's support, anyone's vote. Just what an honor I've had and a privilege it has been to serve Henry County for the past 20 years. I've really, my favorite thing is being able to try to help people who've been a victim of a crime, people who have, also people in other situations who I've been able to help, even if they've been charged with a crime, by holding them accountable for their crimes. And so I really look forward to the opportunity, and I would appreciate everyone's vote to be the next prosecutor.
Awesome. We appreciate you hanging out with us for tonight and putting up with. We're the biggest podcast game in town, but we're not the most polished in the state. I can guarantee it. Tony, anything from your side?
Well, I would like to reiterate what Michael said. We both appreciate you having us on here so we can discuss and kind of make sure that some of the people who may not know us get to know us and understand what our philosophy is. I want to be clear that this particular election is a job interview, and I think we all saw that when a choice is made, there may be a candidate who's a really nice guy who people like, and there may be a candidate who's rough around the edges whose aggression is sometimes misconstrued as arrogance or just general jerkery, which is something I hear from people all the time. But we've seen what can happen when we choose the wrong person, and we can't let Henry County become like Indianapolis, Chicago, or New York, or San Francisco, where the wrong choice for a prosecuting attorney has led to some really bad consequences. And I've made a reputation over the last 16 years for being aggressive for my clients, for being creative, for getting things done for them, and helping them through difficult situations. And if you are unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or have someone in your family be the victim of a crime, I think this is really a choice of who would you feel would be better able to deliver justice to you. And I believe I'm that person. You can find my campaign on Facebook. As I stated, I'm your neighbor. My office is here. If you want to stop by and talk to me about anything, I've got time usually to do that.
Not going to get billed for that.
Well, it depends on how long. No, I'm just kidding. But like I said, my door's usually open and I can talk to anybody about
trying to get free
anything.
legal advice after you're talking.
Now, wait a minute. That's not what I meant. No, but anyway, I'll bill him if you want free legal advice.
You can. Please do. I don't contribute to this thing at all. I put my ass in the chair and I just do my job.
You don't contribute, so do you take away? Do you detract?
Have you heard his commentary tonight?
I was trying to be nice.
Today it was good. Today's good, you know.
It was
I
a good day.
I didn't have to use my AK, as Ice Cube says.
Anyway, so yeah, you can find me on Facebook, and I do appreciate anybody's vote. And like I said, I really want to hear what people have to say, what they would like to see change, and what they'd like me to do if I'm elected to that office. So feel free to contact me at my office. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anything from you, Jesse?
I'm looking for free legal advice. Interpretation of law. Interpretation of law. I want some interpretation of law.
I will give you the free legal advice I give everybody.
What's that?
Don't break the law.
Yeah. Well, this is why I'm bringing this up, because I want to make sure I'm not breaking the law. And I work downtown. And
that is not breaking the law.
Yeah, I work downtown, and I may or may not cross at every intersection that is an intersection. So, in the topics of jaywalking,
I don't do a good Barney Fife impersonation, so I can't help you.
Indiana Code 9-21-17-2 says walk, and this is in quotes, walk, and don't walk signals. Whenever special pedestrians control signals exhibiting the words walk or don't walk are in place, the signals must indicate as follow. Flashing or steady walk means a pedestrian is facing blah, blah, blah. Steady walk means a pedestrian may not start to cross the roadway, blah, blah, blah. Flashing don't walk means this. And then the code kind of just stops. Duty to obey means a pedestrian shall obey these instructions of an official traffic control device specifically applicable to the pedestrian unless otherwise directed by a police officer. So my question is, if no traffic signals have the words walk or don't walk anymore. They are pictures of people and hands. Would you guys defend me in a jaywalking case?
Well, he's going to prosecute you.
I'd take that to the Supreme Court.
Can we take it to court?
Yeah.
I mean, we could do it to court.
Jesse, this is your grand opportunity for a jury trial.
I'm just like, you guys want to take it? You guys want more jury trials? I'm ready to go. I'm ready. I'm locked and loaded. I'm like, let's go. Let's go. I want to win this. I want the state to be punished.
For its aggression.
Kind of going back. It's a terribly written law.
But going back to that whole
Yes.
judicial resources thing, if they started arresting people for jaywalking, they'd have to house us in army barracks somewhere. 'Cause I do it too.
Yeah. I only bring that up because when I worked with a guy who was from Utah, and he was a contractor for the company I worked for, and he's like, dude, everybody jaywalks around here. I was like, Is that a thing? Like, I didn't know like other states didn't have jaywalking. They teach
you how to do it at Purdue and IU. It's a core part of the.
So he's from Utah. He's like, dude, we don't have like jaywalkers. I was like, so everyone walks all the way to an intersection and crosses? He's like, absolutely. I go, that's insane.
So when I was up at Purdue at Grant Street and 26, when the light changed, just a crush of people crossed 26, and it was probably 1/10 of a mile of people just jaywalking. And I have the conspiracy theory that the reason they made that a two-way street was to stop people from doing that.
Yeah.
I go downtown Indianapolis with my wife, who graduated from IU Bloomington, and her complete disregard for any sort of safety, pedestrian safety as a walker, is wild and insane to me. And I think she learned it all at IU Bloomington. I go downtown and she's 4 steps ahead of me. She's already got it crossed, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to live." I don't know.
You don't follow the signals, and you don't need to because there's no law against it. And my duty,
survival instinct.
My
Jesse.
duty. Well, I mean, there's something, right? Like I left so this is so weird.
Is that a current version of the code?
Yeah. If you want to work with me to change this, I would. Part of my life is to be like,
small victories.
I want to get pulled over for it. I want to get pulled over for it and take it to court, just to like, not just to be a dick, but like literally just be like, guys, why did you write it so stupidly? Why did you write it with quotes and with the words walk? Like,
When it was
the
written,
interpretation is The signal says walk and don't walk.
When it was written, they were probably on horses, and it was a mechanical change.
No. They used to say walk and don't walk. And that's what they wrote the law towards.
But didn't you have the District 54 people? That's more for them to change.
I think even in Newcastle, they don't have don't walk and walk. So anyway, one of my life's goals, I don't have many, but this is one, is to get this law nullified and just removed, expunged, get whatever the word is, I don't know, but or at least get it rewritten, because I'm like, this is stupid. And so I walk in front of cops and I'm like, please just take me with you. I am here. I can't wait to take this to trial. And none of them want to do it. So I don't know.
I was the campaign manager for Rex Bell when he ran for governor in 2016, and he used to say all the time, "There's a difference between a law and a great idea."
Yeah,
and sometimes things shouldn't be laws that are just great ideas.
Again, it's weird because most laws are very vague. This one is like walk and don't walk, and I'm like, why would you write that?
How long have you been saving this? Because how long has this been bottled up in you?
I've talked to at least 5 attorneys. So here's the better part. On Tinder, a girl I matched with.
This is
Tinder, a girl.
Life is?
Hold up, listen. On Tinder,
I don't know why you're single.
We had that in with some comedy. So on Tinder, one of the girls was an attorney, and my opening statement was, "So Indiana Code -9-thing. I want to know." I was like, "Would you defend me in court?" Like that was it.
Unmatched.
She did immediately. Gone.
There are opening statements on Tinder.
Oh yeah, you have to find some way to be like clever and witty and funny. And I thought it was funny, especially as an attorney. I'm like, look, I'm trying to combat with you. Like, I want to do some mental sparring with you and like talk about Indiana Code for a little bit. Like, get down and dirty in Indiana Code.
Oh my God,
you made the correct site, which sometimes a lot of attorneys don't even do.
Oh
so
yeah,
that was impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, so it's unmatched immediately. So she was she was like, this guy's going to be too much. I think that's what she said.
She's probably like, this guy's just trying to get free legal advice.
Sure, she's going to send you a Venmo request to answer your call. I will leave with Craig DaCosta. He's now a defense attorney, the former prosecutor. His free legal advice, because Tony gave his says, as a defense attorney, my free legal advice is don't talk to cops. That's
also
what he leaves us with.
Just good legal advice.
All right. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate you spending your time. I know we don't do this a lot as a community, and having conversations and coming on a podcast is a unique challenge of running for office. But I thank you both very much for running and giving the people a chance to hear from you. And as a 4-time failed candidate myself, thank you for putting your name on the ballot and giving the people
as a 3rd-time failed candidate, thank you also.
Yeah, and Chris,
thank you.
Yep. As a 1-time.
We've been down this road before.
Thanks for hanging out with a bunch of losers. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, thank you guys very much. We will see this audience again next week. Dakota and Zach should be back, and I think we're talking to the Northern District Commissioner candidates. So Joey Cooper and Joe Wiley. That's next week's show.
Thank you.